It's another Manly Monday, and yes, we are continuing to talk about shame, and Cthulhu's like hiding behind the pillow. It's kind of funny that I never pose Cthulhu. It's just however he ends up, because the cats like jump on him and everything like that. You'll see the cat nail clippers because it was toenails week at the Kersner house. But yeah, we're talking about how shame makes you an asshole. And this is a continuation of the discussion about shame because I've been thinking about this a lot, especially in light of that. Now again, this is just an emotional reaction. I'm not saying the commenter did anything wrong, just I had a bad reaction. It's different to, a comment about corrections in single gendered spaces. And I really sat with that because that was a shame trigger of mine, right? And I recognize it for what it is. I sit with it. I process it and I learn things. And, it's interesting. And I came to some conclusions. The patron. This is loaded this week. If you saw the drama on Twitter over the weekend, help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/Leanna K. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/Leanna K. Last week, you guys were super generous with that person I said needed the assistance. I'm going to be able to give the guy sessions for like a month. You guys were super generous. Thank you for that. Always nice. Yeah. So that, that can be a difficult thing, especially for men admitting they can't afford something and asking for help. So I'm very, very happy that, you guys were generous that way. The reason I was like, on Patreon is I had I'm pulling my Patreon support from one guy over the weekend because he got embarrassed and handled it badly. And I'm like, this is ironic considering I had already planned to talk more about shame today. And it was not one guy, just one guy. Like, I had another guy who, and it's always about the trans stuff. For people who don't know, this is a trans friendly channel. The community is trans friendly. The Twitch chat is trans friendly. So, if you have horrible opinions about trans people, that's your right, but keep them where trans people can't see them. And keep them where I can't see them. Because the minute, and this is a behavior, not an opinion thing. And this is one of the things I realized that I come from, through the shame thing. I'm actually really old fashioned when it comes to my views of how you treat people. And what do I mean by that? I'm very much, it's not your business unless it's your business kind of person. But I'm also if somebody does for me, I have their back, I'll go to the mat. If I don't owe you anything, we are not friends. That's sort of, I'm very old school that way. And I know that is not the way a lot of people look at the world. And I have been really demonized for that in real ways, especially on the left, because, I think maybe just because that's a mindset that, some of those libertarian conservatives are sort of a common core values thing, even though we can vehemently disagree on other things. There's sort of a basic, if somebody tells you they don't want to talk about something, if somebody tells you to stop, you just do it. Your opinion's not important enough to upset someone. I am very much, I would love to go back to that whole we don't talk about, religion or politics in polite company era. But that's not the world we live in today. Like I said, I'm old school. And that correction thing, the shame thing, comes from, having very progressive viewpoints on social stuff, but coming at it with an old school framework. And no one can, like, people have trouble figuring me out for that reason, but the old school framework kind of informs the way I view other people and other identities and things like that, because I don't know if anybody's seen the movie, what is it, Gran Torino? I keep wanting to call it Gran Turismo because video games, but Gran Torino with Clint Eastwood, where he's this like racist crotchety bastard, but his neighbors are Hmong. And it's the sort of thing of no matter what views he has in the abstract, he knows them. They're good people. He helps them. Right? And that's sort of my attitude. I can think somebody is into some weird stuff. But if they're cool, they're cool. I'm not going to get in their face about it. And I don't want them to get in mine. And I'm a big, when I say drop it person. And that's because that's how I ended up post-shame. When I didn't go, drop it. No, drop it. No, I'm serious. People just bombarded me with their opinions and I ended up feeling bad all the time. So now I'm at the point where this is not important enough to feel bad. I don't want to hear it. How many times have I told you I don't want to hear it? Okay, we're done. And I will cut a person off. Now, on social media, I give a lot more rope. And unfortunately, I got shamed for that this weekend too, because I will roast people. I will be an asshole instead of, and I own that, instead of blocking them. Because it's impossible to tell with certainty what someone's deal is online. And some people just need to be hit with a brick to see what they're doing wrong, proverbially, right? Not literally. And, I know so many people who would have preferred somebody be very, very harsh with them as opposed to them just cutting them off and them never really knowing why. And so I give people every chance. Sometimes it is not nice, but they can't say that they didn't know they pissed me off. And yet some people still keep going. And here's how this ties into shame. I really think in a lot of these cases, and they're all guys, with notable exceptions. There are a few. No, you know what? The lefty activist, feminist types, air quotes, they descend into self-pity and want me to be their mommy much quicker. And they don't get it. No, I don't know why people want me to be their mommy. I don't have that energy, for fuck's sakes. Ugh. I don't even have girl brain. Don't expect me to be your mother. But that's that shame, right? It's all shame. And so what happens is this whole victim thing, which I admit I can't stand. I can't stand when people revel in victimhood, because it triggers that old school, like, have you no shame? But I realize that in me, no, all they have is shame. And that's why they're rolling around and I'm such a victim. Now, guys don't get the same license to do that. That's just fact. That's just fact, rightly or wrongly. Um, Part of the reason I push these issues, and a thing that people really don't understand my approach, it's like what I said on Friday. For every, shitty thing that men experience as a female, you know, counterbalance, it's equally shitty, and vice versa. So I do see resentment in a lot of guys for the fact that women can just roll around in victimhood and get pats on the head. Here's the thing about that. All people see from that point forward is a victim. You are locked in. It's a ceiling of tears. Just that ceiling of tears just turns into that glass ceiling. You will never really be a leader because people pity you. And it's not fair. People deserve to have bad moments. But I think people are allowed to have bad moments and then, pick themselves up, brush themselves off, get back on the horse. Okay. But when people become synonymous with victimhood, rightly or wrongly, that's all you're ever going to be. And there are more spaces in the world for, you don't hear men talking about being a hot mess the same way you hear women just dropping over lunch. Yeah, I'm a hot mess. Right? And I personally, and because I'm old school, I'm a jerk about these things. I think women should do it a little less and men should do it a little more, personally, because equality, right? Equality doesn't necessarily look the same. You guys know I believe in boy brain and girl brain, and in between brain, right? But there comes a point in time where it's performative. Now, there's this thing, and this is how it ties into shame. There's this thing I see, and I may completely botch the rollout on this, the explanation, because I've never really laid it out before, so bear with me. But I see, like I said, this resentment in some guys that women are allowed to just roll around in victimhood. And these guys are hurting. But the minute they speak, they get shamed into silence. And that's what I associate with correction. Like I said, that's what happened to me. My sister, who was more of a proper girl, could be, oh, this boy dumped me. Oh, my friends hate me. Oh, drama, 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 drama. But the minute I said, my stomach hurts, oh, stop complaining. We were treated very, very differently. We had the same parents. And this is why, when you don't read female, but you're sorted into girl, the corrections suck because they're completely confusing. And I do think, especially in gaming, I suspect, you guys can tell me if this is actually true, that a lot of guys in gaming get the same thing. They don't really have that, Chad thing going on. And so they don't get the benefits of that. And so when they try to be tough, right? I hate that term, but you know what I mean. When they try to emulate that, they get punished. But then they're shamed for the stuff that's more comes to them more naturally, right? Something that's more in line with their inherent nature. And I much prefer that latter category in terms of who I surround myself with. I cannot stand that performative hypermasculinity. It's not even rational with me. A guy starts out with me, I just go Hulk. I just I can't explain it. A guy gets in my face like that and I give back. And I'm not saying that's right. It's just my instinct on the whole thing. I find it incredibly obnoxious and, quite frankly, fake. And I've had guys tell me, and I believe them, that, well, that's just the way they are, and okay. And yet I got a bunch of buddies who are ex-military, and once they trust you, they're freaking teddy bears, and I love it. So, there's definitely some shame going on. So when a guy feels wounded, when he's trying to hide that feeling of victimization, it comes out in these really sideways ways. And it's a complex mix of stuff, right? Because it's not just the shame of not being able to admit the emotional injury, not being able to admit you're hurt, being shamed into silence about your own pain. But boys, their whole lives, are not as encouraged to develop emotional vocabulary as girls are. And so they might not even have the words for what they're feeling, which is why I'm a big proponent of just give it a name. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it makes sense to anyone else. Give it a name for yourself so you know what it is. Like I said, I have a Fred emotion. I feel Fred. But it's funny. People, Leanna Care sessions, they mention they have like names for certain states too. So it's not just me. But being able to sort out your feelings is really important, because you can't process them if you don't know what you're processing, right? You don't know what system to put it on. You don't know what process you have to use, because, processing fear is a different process than processing anger, is a different than processing grief, and they're all interconnected sometimes, right? But it's really important to be able to know what you're feeling. But when somebody's deep in shame, that's really hard. When someone's depressed, the feelings are numbed, and the minute they start coming out of a depression, there's this, I call it a membrane of anger, because your body's going, what the fuck was that? Everything suddenly just, all of a sudden you're being burned by your own feelings because you're feeling them again. And people, especially family members, tend to respond quite badly to those outbursts, and I don't know why therapists of profoundly depressed people don't meet with the families and say, hey, if you want your loved one to get better, here's what you have to be prepared for, because it's just part of the process. Send a pamphlet home or something. Now, the problem is, if you send a pamphlet home, trust me, from experience, your family, your loved one just goes, this is bullshit. A therapist really needs to sit down with the family of the person who wants better and explain to them, look, this is the process. It's healthy. It's normal. It's not fun. But when someone starts feeling their feelings again, don't shame them for it. And that's a big reason why so many people are just down, 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 down. Like that Korn song, what's that song? Oh, my hand cannot be bound. I will not be bound. Pushing that one. Anyway, I squirreled. But say somebody's not like diagnosed, but they're still low. There's still a lot of shame. Shame makes someone feel, and I'm not talking like a minor embarrassment. I'm talking a state of being. There are a lot of people walking around with this proxy for a real self-concept. Because remember, I said shame takes your self-esteem and then it takes your self-concept, and all that's left is the self-loathing. Because something's got to fill that space. It's like an emotional cyst, right? It's just a pocket of yuck where your sense of self should be. And it makes people do some self-destructive things. And, you know, it's moments like the weekend I had on Twitter this week where I see it. I know exactly what's going on, but it's like, I'm not this person's mother. You know, I tell them to stop. They don't. Well, okay, you're going to get nice me, and then you're going to get not nice me, and then you're going to get really not nice me. And at that point, you know I'm not happy with you. So if you're at all accountable, you know you earn the block. Of course, they never know they earn the block. Because they're too ashamed to admit that they made a mistake. What? You'd think that if you're ashamed, you'd want to avoid mistakes. It's not what happens. And I kind of understand it. But again, I'm not subject to boy code. So I'm coming at this sideways. And please fill in the blanks for me with this. It's like when someone feels I'm no good, as opposed to what I did was no good. They can't admit they did another bad thing because it's too painful. The shame monster just roar, right? And so they go into denial and they dig their hole deeper and deeper and deeper. And I can see these little vestiges that they know they fucked up. But they can't admit it. And then they go, you. They start deflecting, right? And at that point, I'm like, you know, I become that Gene Wilder's Willy Wonka pose, you know, like, oh, very interesting. Okay, poke. And, you know, over the weekend, I realized too late. Because, you know, sometimes when somebody's really... Every so often I misjudge whether someone's trolling or not. And then I find out, oh God, they were serious the whole time. There was one guy over the weekend I actually said, okay, you actually need help. Like seriously, seek help. I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. I'm blocking you now. This isn't healthy. 'Cause you just get this sense off people sometimes that even though they're yelling and name calling and all this stuff, I don't know. I can't describe. It's just, there's this wailing quality, this wail of pain underlying all of it. And it's just like, Twitter is not the forum for that. And it was fun when it was just, you know, the guy's proverbial dick in it. Not some trauma that I can do nothing about, right? It's one thing when the guy's just being a dick and it ain't personal. But when I get to that point, it's like, no, I'm not that big an asshole. And it sucks because there's nothing I can do for a person down that low. That actually does require therapy. Because there's serious building blocks missing when someone is that disconnected from their own ability to know what's going on inside them. Because there's a lot of people walking around with so much shame that they keep doing the exact opposite of what the smart and healthy thing would be in that moment. And that I can relate to. When I was like full-blown PTSD, now I'm somebody who will beat myself up before I'll beat somebody else up. And I had to stop doing that because that was the shame, right? So every time I'm an asshole, it's a victory. Because it's like, no, I don't deserve to be treated that way. You're an asshole. Have it back, right? That's progress for me. There was a time where I just, okay, yeah, I'm every bad thing you say about me. Because I had no fight left in me. So many people had said I was so many bad things. It's like, it's easier to just believe them. And that's why I push back. I challenge the learn to handle criticism thing, because that does not mean what a lot of people think it means. You know, handling criticism is the ability to listen to it, not get wounded, and go, yeah, okay. You know, you don't have to say it to the person. You can, but yeah, okay, I hear you. This is what you think I did wrong. You're wrong. That's not what I'm doing. Next. Right? Or, yeah, okay, I could have done that better. You know, it's not that you did bad, therefore you are bad. If you have that chain reaction in your head when someone says you did something bad, and what that inspires in you is a voice telling you you are bad, that is shame. And someone did that to you. That is not your fault. The challenge is to not act on that as if you're drowning. Because as sympathetic as people can be, eventually they get tired of the lashing out, the flailing that comes from that drowning. And that's one of the things I realized, that I couldn't stay down anymore because people were getting sick of me, and rightly so. And, I didn't want to drive people away. I did not want to be, branded forever by victimhood. And so it's like, all right, nobody's giving me things that are actually helping me. Let's just try shit and see what works. And I ended up, it was like God of War 2, God of War 3, something like that. But it was, well, I mean, the first time we ever see Kratos in any God of War game, he's throwing himself off a cliff. He's trying to die by suicide, right? And then there's a point in every game where he like drags himself out of hell, and there's all these arms trying to pull him back down, right? It's this motif in the God of War games. And I'm like, that's it. That's what it's like. Okay. So how do I beat this level? You slash at the freaking hands. Oh, okay. So I got to cut away the people who, right. That's what the trauma counselor was telling me. But I was too afraid of being alone. I needed a frickin' video game mechanic to go, oh, that's why you do that. Right? But shame does blind you from the right answers, because it was all that you're a loser. No one wants to be around you. Nobody likes you. That stuff. You're just so difficult. You're so weird. You're so this, like my whole life. Right? Just, And you just sort of have to go, all right, that hurt so bad when I was rejected, but sometimes you have to. And I ended up going, yeah, I can understand why people were sick of me. You know what? That means I'm not asking for more than I'm asking from other people. So yeah, some people gotta go. But that was getting past the shame of being rejected. But also, that shame that was keeping me from getting rid of some people who are not good for me. And unfortunately, that's a lifelong thing. You realize that some people are just not your people. And that's nobody's fault. Sometimes it is someone's fault. But, sometimes it's not anybody's fault. It just is. And finding a way to sort of be shame neutral when relationships fall apart is really useful. But yeah, if you're not aware of the shame, it will make you an asshole. It will, you'll think you're handling criticism. You'll think you're accepting it, but you're not. You're fighting it. Because ever you did bad is, I am bad. We all know those people. When I'm wrong, I say I'm wrong. If you show me I'm wrong, I'll admit it. And they never, ever, ever do because they can't. Their self-image can't take it, right? And a lot of people are in denial about, and that's why there's see, correction's still not the right word for me, because correction is just, that normalization thing. And I'm trying to find the vocabulary of, there's a difference between somebody telling you something that you know in your gut is true and that you need to make a change, and it's your choice, advice, as opposed to a correction which you must make or else. The first one is healthy. The second one is coercive. And coercion over time brings a fat lot of shame. Like, that's what happens to guys who, try to pray the gay away and marry a woman and have a couple kids. And then, the family breaks down and, it's tough for everybody. Like, hey, you still got 2 kids. It's great. But it's a lot of pain because they took the correction, right? If you're walking around ashamed of who and what you are, if you're internalizing messages that you're not good enough, you're not real, you're not, proper, you're going to waste a lot of years, and you're not going to be able to connect to that inner voice that tells you whether you should listen to, feedback or not. Because everything just feels bad. When you're ashamed, you just assume that, everybody hates you, nobody likes you, everything you do is wrong. But you're so embarrassed to admit it that you never make a mistake. And that sounds completely counterintuitive, but we've all had moments like that, and we all know people like that. And that's how shame makes you an asshole. All right. Hope you enjoyed this content. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/Leanna K. Thanks for watching Manly Mondays.